Hello, Albsterz here. As a new player to Five Nights at Freddy's, and only ever completed Five Nights at Freddy's 1, I wanted to turn and have a little look at the lore. And what better place to do that than the Game Theorist, the one and only MatPat, the ultimate timeline that he has recently uploaded that is an update on the whole franchise and lore as a whole. Let's have a little look at this, shall we? I am going to jump into FNAF 2 very soon. I want to get some lore first. Buckle in and let's go.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games,
What?
8 whole years, all leading.
There's 11. Okay, there's 11. I've already done one. And 19 book. I would love to actually read the books.
This moment. The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The
Wow.
pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss
Ooh.
back together.
Okay.
Hello, Internet.
Hello.
Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life.
Oh, and that's probably not going to stop because Scott Cawthon, I do believe the developer's name is probably not going to stop with Five Nights at Freddy's. Stillwater still developing in the game. Bloomhouse apparently might be developing a Five Nights at Freddy's game as well.
This
So
one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kind of nervous.
crazy.
I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when
Wow.
Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last
Fazgoo? That's something I don't want to be covered in.
time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more
Yes.
robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is
And it's kind of cool that they've hired Raggy Scooby. I can't remember the actor's name, but they've hired him as William Afton, as I've done some revision. It looks really cool.
exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theory. So to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First,
Okay.
this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create.
Ooh, so it's kind of like a revenge plot as well. I know there isn't too much lore in the actual games themselves. You have to kind of find it through posters and stuff like that I've been told playing through FNAF 1, so it's going to be interesting.
Then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation of Freddy's, how the business started and how it came into being, the Afton era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF. Everything that happens after the pizzeria simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of nowhere, as well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk.
I do believe as at the time of this recording, there are 2 episodes out, but I'm only going to watch this one as it is kind of spoilers into the later games that I'm going to play. But I think getting the overall timeline, just so I'm a little bit more informed going into each of them, I think is good to do. And then the other 2 videos, that'll be at a later date. Let me know in the comments if that's a good thing to do or not.
I originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm gonna merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best, most satisfying, most complete
Yeah, I think
way
splitting
to
it into
do
parts
this.
is good.
That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen,
that's pretty cool to do.
Thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So
Because and then if you want to look into the lore yourself, then you know where to go to and stuff like that. That's actually really cool. The books are really intriguing. I really want to pick some up.
If you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look at those details for yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back to a few.
Yeah, subscribe. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I produce horror videos and some funny funny videos now and again as well. And we're playing through Sons of the Forest. But subscribe to Matt Pet, subscribe to me. It helps out everyone and even the old alien boy here, alright? Don't ask where I got this from.
Times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Hey, that's pretty cool. Eternal life, I know it had its up and down.
Not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression, and people were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, fourth highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits. A simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singing Show.
And that's why I think YouTube does so well, because it's free entertainment that anyone around the world can enjoy. And that's why I think it is going to become the most popular platform in the world. It currently second anyway.
Plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time.
Yeah, that is very old school.
Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this
Betty Boop! Okay, that is old school.
Fredbear's was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the Vaughn brothers or the Robbins brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had.
Is that going to be William?
Named Billy. That was his
name
at least, but his parents liked to call him William. William Afton. The bear could dance.
Why do you get the name Billy then, or nickname?
Dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests.
And that made that a lot easier, so then people can actually make it more lifelike because there's someone actually underneath them. That's a cool little change.
So the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. Well, Fredbear was certainly his first love.
Isn't Bonnie purple now in FNAF 1? So it was originally yellow by design? Okay, that's it. That's something to keep note and stuff like that.
Was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story.
Oh yeah, it could have grew
perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea and they wanted in. Enter
greed. Greed. The one killer. The one thing.
Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do.
Opposing? So Chica wasn't his... Okay. So the animatronics that we see in FNAF 1 are not necessarily... So they must have come under one roof or something
the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in
That's
some
a double barrel name, isn't it, as well?
The power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's party world was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica.
I'm used to that one.
Country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait,
that's
a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme.
Imagine if they did a horse animatronic and you would see, like, in one of the FNAF games, you'd have, like, a horse jump scare. I don't know if I could take that. Could you take that seriously if they done like a horse animatronic?
A bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fred Bear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's party world over Fred Bear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult, another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget.
And this is the revenge plot, or just so he wants to learn everything that Henry knows so he can create his own and become the best franchise, or like the best, the store, or whatever it is that they go to. That's probably how it started, maybe?
1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original
he was there
mascot. first. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one...
What? Okay, Bonnie looks so different. Sorry, I had something on my glasses, but yeah, Bonnie looks so different here.
Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that
but it is the original
from
suit.
Masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo.
Hey, at least you got a magnet.
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre. So they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others, though, would fare much better, like a new pirate fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983...
Oh! Sister Locations is an actual game. That's the exact one. Yes, I haven't played it yet, but that would be the spin-off. Oh, no shot. Okay.
3. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny,
there's
Foxy
the original
the Pirate,
4 that
and of
we
course,
know.
the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly.
Oh, and this was, hold on, this was 1983, wasn't it? And this is where FNAF 1 is
Bonnie,
started.
Foxy the Pirate,
Hold on.
Freddy...
Yes, 1983, and that's where we start our journey in FNAF 1.
Fazbear's Pizza launch, giving a dedicated
so
home
we caught
to
up.
all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show.
So Afton, sorry for pausing, I just really want to just try and absorb it. I know that Matt had to explain it, but Afton is around, but we don't know in FNAF 1 in terms. I know the lore's like way ahead now, but based on where I'm playing and where I've started.
Only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter, he had a thriving business, and best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics.
Yep.
But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure?
No, you just look at that and that's no.
Possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival.
Well, competitive, or what is it? What is it? Competition always breeds excellence. So this is what he doesn't know, Henry doesn't know, but it's breeding him to become the best version of himself, but obviously not.
Prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1 of the story. That said, at the end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that
that was in The Greatest Showman
none
as
of our
well.
main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old.
So it would have to be like a family business or something that his father told him about?
Best case scenario, if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. That just doesn't make a lot of logical sense because
no, I don't think someone with a Zimmer frame is going to go around murdering people.
he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. The Fredbear Singin' Show thing also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of this story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids.
Well,
he wanted to
I was
bring
about to say
things
that.
to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise.
From what I've just learned here, it seems like at the beginning that William Afton just wanted to entertain the kids like he was entertained, or how he was ever presented with that bear. He just wants to give that same love back, but obviously something takes a big turn.
Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams
that's
in
Glitch
everything.
Trap?
It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself. There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So
very. I'm so excited for the movie of FNAF, because if they want to, Blumhouse can just go full balls to the walls.
Oh, well, Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation. Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy,
what is
Fredbear,
that?
is a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time. And that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2.
Okay, this is spoiler territory, but we didn't see anything, alright? We didn't see anything.
Mascot suits specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now,
Mediocre
I've suspected that the
melodies?
mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fredbear. And yet, there are 2 key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And 2, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse.
Oh, really?
But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off, Henry. We've talked extensively about how the
Well, yeah, I thought that was touched upon in the video earlier.
mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation.
Oh, there you go, lovely.
Written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages: Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues.
Yeah, so most stuff what they do in China, they're just like, yep, we'll take this, we'll change it slightly, and this is going to be our new item. There's so much stuff for FNAF, I didn't even realize, with all the games, with all the books, with the encyclopedia, with the merch, and like all the stuff that they have.
I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with 2 rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters merging to become one unit.
What are these? It's Chuck E. Cheese. I've never seen Chuck E. Cheese. I'm from the UK, so I don't think, I can't remember that we've had a Chuck E. Cheese.
Brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here.
Oh, they look so weird.
Why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? Few things, actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location, so it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story The Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear,
so we could get a prequel at some point then in Chica's
that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with a theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica.
Excuse me? What? Okay, what? We just continue.
That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all of this a big leap? Yeah. Is it connecting a lot of dots that are very spread out across the franchise that I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years? Absolutely. But I think it makes sense. It also serves as a clean answer to a lot of the random threads that Scott's been leaving dangling for years. So, with all of that in mind,
just
my
like
friends, we can close the book on the foundation of Freddy's.
Wow,
Don't worry,
okay.
next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation. Part 2, the Afton era. I promise
we won't be watching that, not yet.
This time. No more waiting around. I am just as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise. You know what else I promise? I promise that we'll actually get to talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although
Oh, okay, so I wouldn't have found any of the pre-Family Diner stuff in the games' actual self. There are a couple of spoilers here that MatPat drops throughout, so probably wouldn't have been advised to watch this, but I still don't have an understanding to the little spoilers that were dropped. I'm still up in the air like, what? That don't make sense. Like, what?
So, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the games anyway. Even back in the early days of FNAF, we were decoding images and source code that Scott fed us through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things, now they're just modern extensions of that. All of it is crucial to understanding
That's kind of cool, like a mermaid animatronic design.
Finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
I've always would love to do is get kind of back to, I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind of like the origin of like Fazbear Entertainment.
I said the cheeky thing.
Freddy Fazbear.
But in the meantime, while we wait for
they
that
might do.
inevitably cryptic game, I hope that this start to the timeline helps to fill in some of those gaps. I'm excited to share part 2 with you next week. If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell, make sure you do it now.
Yeah, what
so
you
you're
doing? Come
notified
on,
when that
subscribe.
part drops. I cannot wait to see your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I remind you, it's all just a theory.
Just game theory.
Go easy on me. Tried my best.
Hello, Albsterz here. Today we're going to be jumping into part 2 of MatPat's FNAF Ultimate Timeline, The Rise of the Aftons. But before we do that, I would like to get your suggestions on any horror games you would like me to play alongside the mainline series and also the FNAF games. Let me know down in the comments and I will add them to the list and get round to them. But without further ado, let's have a little look at the rise of the Afton.
Internet. Welcome to Game Theory.
Hello
and
again, MatPat.
Page 7 of the FNAF timeline.
That is
script.
nuts.
Last time we covered the origins of Freddy's. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life, and the infuriating moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name.
We also learned in the previous episode as well about the animatronics and the children possessing each of the animatronics, the crying boy and Cassidy into Golden Freddy, etc, etc. It was really, really cool and actually kind of mind-blowing that I didn't know about that kind of lore.
Last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life,
really kind of
that was his
creepy.
core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death. Something that Afton would become intimately familiar with.
Chapter 2, the Afton era.
1983. Business was booming with two whole restaurant franchises running. Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's
Well, if I remember,
Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the
is
hybrid suit idea and
FNAF
make it into
2,
a reality.
1993
They
is
called their new
FNAF 1.
invention the Springlock suit. And fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushie Fredbear. But
What? So he had a plushie that had cameras in to keep an eye on his children.
since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all.
He doesn't. It's just like, no, I got some animatronics to build. Don't worry about them. boys will be boys.
Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair.
Yeah, but if he took off the mask, he wouldn't be crying.
Even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed,
would you even
screamed,
do that?
kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements, and they'd immediately clamped down.
The noise that must have made in that room, that must haunt Michael for the end of days. Not only losing his brother, but that noise as well.
Stopped. The boy went limp, but it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny.
Just a
The
prank,
boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together.
So he didn't even turn up with his son in hospital? He just sent the plush? Wow, that really says a lot about William Afton.
Would not be the end. No matter what, William's son,
even though he's trying to rebuild him,
just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother.
That's a good idea, to be honest.
Lock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV, but his son...
Yeah, because I was about to say, from the first video that we watched, we don't see or hear too much about William Afton's wife, so maybe this gets expanded upon here.
Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite.
Hold on. The fan game Juniors that we're playing, that doesn't take place in a haunted bar, does it? Where they possess the animatronics? That would be so cool if the actual fan game is based on this bar, but we just didn't know.
He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how
that's what alcohol does anyway. You just reflect.
Themed restaurant.
Think of
how
the memories.
They cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him.
You kind of took Charlotte from him as well. I know it's both very unfortunate, but you have kind of done a little bit worse.
That part was the part that failed after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't.
Good on the bartender.
And angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea, a beautifully awful idea.
No.
Humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own.
So he does it out of revenge and kind of like, I've lost my son, so you can now lose your daughter, kind of thing.
Feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. It felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil.
God, that's no. I wonder if they're gonna put this into the FNAF movie. Let me know if you think they're gonna go as far to do this. It is a horror film at the end of the day, but if they make it PG-13 or 18, depends on how far they could go with maybe these scenes that we kind of are talking about here.
It would make Henry hurt like he hurts. And in that moment, William became the killer, dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime.
So he actually did kind of
Fredbear's family diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location, and there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering and even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria.
But that's what I think he was kind of hoping with that, with the death of Charlotte, that Henry would grieve and stuff like that during his time, because he knew, William Afton knew that he could bring his son back, so that's why it's kind of driving him at the exact same time in order to try and bring him back, I think. And also to get better than Henry.
First of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son.
There you go, yeah, I just literally answered my own question.
Together. This was for him, all for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem.
I can't actually wait to play Sister Locations because it seems so important to like the story and finding out what William Afton was doing down in his basement in there.
To keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions.
Yeah, but don't do it on your other son.
With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it?
So you're gonna terrify your son, even though your first son was terrified of the animatronic, but now you're gonna give like Michael like PTSD essentially with all of them coming in and trying to attack him in the bedroom and stuff?
Extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls?
That's so
All
great.
I see is an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
That's his wife?
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
Am I getting that correct in terms, or am I not getting that right?
The diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be unleashed, what it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1984. 1985. Putting on the Golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. You never truly forget your first.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed inside of the suits.
Oh, that is so rancid and disgusting. How could you not smell it? In the suit. I know they talk about it a little bit later on in terms of the animatronics stinking up, but surely you'd look inside it or something. That smell would be so strong.
Maintain those things anyway, except for him. And so Susie would go.
Oh, he's the only one that maintains
Fritz,
them.
Jeremy, and Gabriel would come next, but it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one, where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school. Throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him to the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far. That one he shouldn't have killed.
Oh, and that's why Cassidy is the one that's the vengeful spirit, because it was the one that was brutally attacked. That now pieces that together, and that's why Cassidy's always coming after Afton and wants him to be brutally injured as well and has the same suffering, and that's why he constantly keeps dying all the time, because Cassidy wants him to have that same sort of feeling that they went for.
With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best, and so he walked away.
Well, yeah, they can only assume, can't they? And I think I got the date wrong with FNAF.
He saw his daughter Charlie all over again, so he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics, toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines and
so much lore to take in. I'm like, trying to scramble the dates in together. I'm a dum-dum. I'm a big dum-dum. It's 1987.
Local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back, and without him, that was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture. No, as long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply call.
I know,
Afton
they halved the
would go
price.
Back, not as an owner or
no, actually it would be beforehand, so they would have upped the price.
They would least suspect him. A lowly day shift security guard. And there it was, buried in the back of parts and services, mixed in with the old withered animatronics, was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building's on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. Our position just became
available. So that's what they were referring to.
5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now.
I think the bite, if I remember correctly, was an outburst to the security guard because it was a adult and it just, as it was a kid possessing the animatronic, if I remember this correctly, with the lore that we're trying to suck in, that is why it attacked the security guard. And also in the comments in the previous video, people were talking about Remnant and how I've got to learn about that as well, and how that ties into Michael. It's really, really cool.
His bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's Pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his
work. This was parts and services eventually, wasn't it?
Experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations. Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as two special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind.
Oh, yep. A bit of foreshadowing of that one, huh?
Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so
why have you got to be British? Hey, why? Oh, hold on. Aren't the Aftons British? That's like a fun little fact that they're actually British. So that's pretty cool.
The day before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. Scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth.
Freak you out. Oh, that really
would.
would.
All be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's. He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started.
This is why he's a nutter. His daughter's just died and he's excited. He's like, yes, yes, wunderbar. This is a breakthrough. This is revolutionary. Oh, man.
1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic.
AR Special Delivery. That's the mobile game, isn't it, if I remember?
Original animatronics from so long ago, but Williams' damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old, broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But we didn't know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was
this is the remnant that we need to know about.
Programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of goo. Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? remnants.
What?
He had to try. He picked up a syringe
Goo?
and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly, the coils came to life. Like snakes
that's so
writhing in a
cool.
pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it! He had unlocked the secret to life itself.
So pretty much he could dismember and just make whatever animatronics he wanted to, and then just keep injecting them with this remnant?
Something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining...
Well, obviously, if you combine multiple souls of people, it's gonna be proper weird.
Scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The five lined up and blocked the door, and Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times.
We talked about this in the comments of the previous video, the everything you need to know about FNAF, and how he was going into the suit and stuff like that, and the meaning behind it. It was really, really cool to talk to everyone about it. That's why in this video as well, if you want to put it down in the comments, any of your theories and stuff, I will try and reply to as many comments as possible. I love it.
Power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge.
So it's a power.
The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant.
Maybe it was the sweat from the anxiety.
He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him, a security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage, and who else would it be other than Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain.
Would he though? Would Henry actually help him though?
Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
There ain't no way that Henry's gonna be helping him. He's gonna be like, nah, karma's got you. Because if Henry still thinks it was Afton that killed his daughter, of course he's gonna walk away.
To inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations.
And that's why he sealed it up.
So if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die.
30 years! 30 years! Oh no. Wow. Because Henry even knew that he was already possessed by the actual suit itself, and that's why he was still alive, or he left him to die.
End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew. Stuff that's been established and reestablished time and time again by
I didn't know about.
That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid.
So he would have seen his sister's death, so that's why he was traumatized by the animatronics. It would make sense, and that's why he didn't want to go near him.
Also, the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And
that
lastly,
would actually make
it explains
a
why
lot of
he's
sense.
scared, and more specifically, why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close, because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep...
I can't wait to play. For people that don't know, I'm playing through the franchise for the very first time. We're currently up to FNAF 3, but I still want to take in all the lore as it's very obscure during the games.
On his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids.
Like that.
And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has
Maybe
no
he was
motive.
experimenting?
It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work, hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he...
But 1993 plus 30 years, if I can do maths quickly, is 2023. That's kind of nuts. And when does security breach or like the current day FNAF take place?
Not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap.
That is
when you put
nuts.
it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts.
Yes, and there is currently 4 parts at the time of recording, so we got 2 parts left to react to this series.
We'll see. Anyway, until then, my Faz heads, congratulations! You've made it through a massive upload. And hey, if you are still looking for more to watch, then check out the other 5 brand new awesome...
Check out MatPat's Stylist channel as well if you want more content from MatPat as well. Hello, Albsterz here. I just completed FNAF 6, so you know what time it is? Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory. FNAF burn them all in the ultimate timeline. This is what is up next. I'm so excited. Let's just jump into it and see the theory behind burn them all. What an ending.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory and page 20 of our final FNAF timeline.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Last time we covered William Afton's rise as a serial killer, how the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drinks. One night in a fit of rage, he lashes out against Henry's young daughter Charlie, his first murder.
I still can't believe that he'd done this and just the way that it just comes together. Oh, FNAF 6 might be my favorite games.
This moment becomes the first domino to fall in a long sequence of events that ultimately destroys William's life and the lives of those around him. That one murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to Remnant and the potential solution for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices,
And that's how Sister Location comes in, isn't it? Where they use Sister Location to send out different animatronics to different locations to try and get as much remnant as possible. And also, since last time or whenever a video has gone up, I've got a little bit more addicted. I got the Silver Eyes, the Twisted One, and the Fourth Closet. I've heard Silver Eyes is one of the best FNAF books as well. So, I don't know what the bonus poster is, but I'm getting addicted to the lore. I thought Angsty Teen in Sister Location meant like a different personality or something that he was trying to train.
Lots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation and
there you go, okay.
remnant. Except there was one thing that he didn't account for. His daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children to put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for,
we see that, we see that in
to pay
FNAF
for the sins of his past. When last we left him, William was spring-locked, bleeding to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video. Today, we're finishing up Chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton era. Over the next 6 pages, we switch our focus to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the fallout of a stupid childhood decision with tragic consequences.
Because we play as Mike during Sister Locations. I still haven't done the secret ending. I'm maybe spoiled in this video, but that's fine. It's different to actually like watching it and actually playing it yourself.
A young man whose life is best described as collateral damage, caught in the blast radius of William's whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just rip off the band-aid now. We won't be finishing the timeline today. I know. I'm sorry, I wanted to, but covering FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach...
So we got all the other secret endings. We got AR to do, we got Security Breach, we got the 2 space fighter games that's also been released as well. We have so much content and I love it.
Wound up taking me an additional 9 pages of script.
Well, the
and I've already made
timeline is already fully out by the time
I just had to make the executive call to break this one up into 2. Don't worry, that part is already written, it is already recorded, it is just in the process of being edited. It is a hefty episode. So mark it on your calendar, that one's actually going to be going live on March 25th. It's also coming complete with a live talk back where we go back over everything from the past couple episodes, as well as having ourselves some very special guests. So overall, that one should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I do believe I watched that. Fair warning though, the conclusions we've reached that solve Security Breach, they are controversial.
Yeah, we're not going to watch them yet. We're just going to watch this one, and then once I've completed Security Breach, that is when we can watch the final episode of the timeline.
I feel good about them. Like, I think that we've locked in on a lot of the answers here, but they're going to raise a lot of discussion. Let's just say that you're either going to love that episode or hate it. I don't really think there's going to be much in between on that one. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike.
The Afton era.
William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the 2 of them. They were...
And Mike's gonna have more guilt due to him actually being there and being actually... the one that kind of caused the actual death as well.
United by a name and a shared pain. This time though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind.
A Step Closer Coming Home is the Fazbear Fright book, and that is number 4. Okay.
Shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it.
Ooh, that's a sexy voice. I've looked around on Twitter. Apparently, the FNAF community finds Mike is apparently hot. That's what. That's what I found in my Twitter searching.
It was right where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair?
That would be
didn't
weird.
Make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet, here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, a prideful, sad, angry man with petty, everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with a stranger this entire time.
Now, my thing is to build something like that as an underground bunker. That takes a lot of infrastructure. It takes a lot of money. So when was that actually built? Or is it something pre-existing that was already built on top of the house that he knew about with the plans? Does that date back even further in time in the 1920s, 1930s? Or is it that he built that and there's just no evidence or law explaining more of it?
His father had secrets. Suddenly, the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here, though? Was this Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his work. Clearly, the entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required
that's where he's spending most of his time
to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby, his father's pride and joy. Except something was different about her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Will you help me?
Was this his sister? William's baby girl? But how?
Well, yeah, that's what we thought.
What was this place? He dug around some old files and found blueprints outlining the features of these animatronics. Storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach?
Squeeze what? So they were literally, the sister location ones were built to store kids. Oh, that's creepy. Oh, man.
Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow been the prime suspect in all of it? Suddenly,
so he
Michael's
didn't know
mind
about
flashed back to his
obviously he wouldn't know
persistent
about that, would he?
nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster, toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him.
Yeah, they were disgusting. That's why it seems FNAF 5 and FNAF 6 seem to be the most interesting in terms of lore. Honestly, I love sister locations. Yeah, the mini games on Night 4 was exceptionally hard, but it was so different. You had the storyline and the voice lines. I liked it. I really did. I know, doesn't like it, but
green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context.
Oh, so it was you. It weren't even baby. It was this weird thing that was trying to get inside of my little cubby hole. Oh, I would have punched that. I would have seen that thing.
Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the Funtime Auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
Yeah, did see that one coming.
The scooping room.
Yep, I'm aware of that.
The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Yeah, just one
Scooper, that violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints.
Whoa, let's back it up a minute. A remnant injector. Leaves trace lines amount on interior, overusage, overexposure is negative effects. Base note, when heated, no observed motion, keep the heat tank at a substitute level, blah, 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 blah. There is a possibility that overheating might neutralize the effects permanently.
Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could...
Oh, that's why! Okay, spoilers just in case you haven't played FNAF 6, I just want to throw that out there. That's why he tries to burn them all alive, because he knows the remnant will make it useless and evaporate in the souls.
Infuse new bodies with the soul. William could finally give and take away life. The only thing he needed were the bodies. But William wasn't the only one looking for bodies, as Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you, then we could hide. If we looked like you,
yes,
then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him, another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
Something is wrong with me.
I'm surprised.
I should be dead, but I'm not.
Oh, so the remnant has gone into Michael? Oh no, was I meant to find this out during the secret ending? I'm so sorry! It's so hard! The secret ending with Ennard is so hard. I will try and get it done, but we're learning.
For the next several months, Michael's life was not his own. He was forced to comply with the tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst.
Surprised.
Day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse, alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still,
so when they burnt him in FNAF 6, he was already pretty much dead anyway.
Still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria location.
Is that meant to be a reference to actual Help Wanted as well, or is that just Help Wanted, like, in terms of an advertisement? Am I looking too deep into this? What does it mean? What does Help Wanted mean? Does it mean this? Does it connect to that? I can see it now.
That way, no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift. And all these old, shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no one ever really wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in his security logbook. While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed new recruits to their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now, there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if
that would be Cassidy.
two spirits were forced to share the same body, and Golden Freddy would attack him now. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts, and each time at the end of his week shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still existed inside seemed like a winning strategy.
Oh, so that was Michael that ended up burning FNAF? I've literally just... I'm recording this as I've just completed FNAF 6 because I wanted it nice and, like, fresh in my memory. But I thought the tape or the recording was alluding to Henry burning it down, but it was actually Michael? Because he says, oh, you're also trapped in here, but it feels like you want to be here as well. That's why I was thinking he was referring to maybe Mike because of him being a part of the family and all the different animatronics. Oh, so it was him.
Well, this revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares to begin again. Hallucinations that brought him back to his childhood. The guilt around killing his brother. His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, a new horror attraction inspired by the awful crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza so many years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family.
So hold on.
This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if it—
Hold on, I've not played all the games yet, but FNAF 6 doesn't take place in 2023, does it? And I don't know what time Security Breach takes place in. So they have a game based off the books, or if they haven't, they could potentially have one in the future.
If his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of tragedy. Mike applied for the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards
did they not question him why he was purple?
Security checks. They also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they knew.
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
For weeks, there was nothing,
Why did you
but
wear
just
a
as Mike
costume?
considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him?
That was
Sure
FNAF
enough,
3, if
there
I
he was.
remember.
William inside his
Yes.
iconic golden Bonnie springlock suit, only now it was green and decaying with age. And there they were, a small family of broken men finally reunited. It's been a long time, Dad. Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria, suddenly sprang to life. Their burned faces haunting him as he tried to keep track of his father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else, but
So that's why they didn't kill you during FNAF 3. I was kind of wondering what the phantoms were, but they're just spirits. It's all making sense. It's all coming together
now.
now.
One that felt different from the others. One that was more than just a mere phantom. The security puppet. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the halls. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground.
What?
It would seem like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with
hold on,
Springtrap, Michael
can you actually do that
this
in
one was
FNAF
likely
3?
dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier
You
day
can
for all
see
of us,
Charlotte
Mike
in
thought to
FNAF
himself.
3?
And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames. It is finished. Except it was not. Somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father. Luckily, the solution would present itself later that year. Not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
So unless Matt Pat might just say exactly what I'm just going to ask, but so maybe the spirit is too powerful, or the remnant, if is too powerful, cannot be burnt?
We're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, restaurant ownership and management, something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face of the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand had been closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit and a wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry, but he'd largely pulled out of the franchise around the time of his father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best, applied for a franchise and immediately got the job. There was just one thing out of the ordinary.
This would be FNAF 6, wouldn't it?
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good.
And that's why they're... Hold on, no, he didn't burn sister locations, did he? He didn't burn the underground bunker, maybe. I would understand Afton from 3, but these two are from sister locations. So did Mike end up burning sister location then?
Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison.
No, maybe the wife did, because in the clip that you get with the exotic butters and like eating the popcorn, she says, "I even burnt the house down." So maybe it was his wife that burnt down the house that ended up burning down the bunker as well.
Truly meant to be the end. If the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you, brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still. And give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you.
What an ending, huh?
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
And with
that's such a hard line. Oh, it gives you chills. Oh, so it was Henry. Henry brought them all together. But Mike ended up staying because he was like, I'm finally at peace. Everyone's here in my family, so we might as well all go out.
It was over. The Afton legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box.
Oh, yeah, there's Lefty.
Danced around the office. Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. But William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments from his past. The pizzeria, his son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out into the silence.
Whoa,
then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop. Make it stop. William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take it anymore, everything was quiet again. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past, all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from.
So this is all happening while he's getting burnt alive. He's just like, ah! Oh, ugh. Imagine having that like cutscene in game and hearing all. Whoa, I don't know where they got the voice line from for that.
More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them, a group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters.
God damn it!
The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here.
So that's Cassidy?
I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where?
Right. Because Chica was the first one.
William felt that. He'd done a lot of awful things, but...
Yeah, there's been a lot of killings. Could you verify which one, please? By hair or eye color or anything like that? It would be Charlotte, wouldn't it? Charlotte would only be the regret.
There was always...
No, it would be I'm an idiot. It'd be Cassidy because of how brutally he killed them.
He's the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder, no. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were back, and now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he'd made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. So
the only way to kill Afton then, if he gets killed in the later games, is to finally put Cassidy to rest, because when you finally put Cassidy to rest, that's when Afton can die.
William's will was so strong, his soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit, and there his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free, a person that no one would suspect. Okay, so a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important one as we shift perspectives to Mike and...
Puts himself into a circuit board. So we're going digital now? Oh, we're going full AI, are we? Oh, what?
Tell his side of the story.
Okay. Let's see the
AR and security breach having so much to explain. I didn't want to rush through things by trying to cram it all in here. Don't worry, I know you've all been patient. The final video is happening on March 25th. That is locked. It is getting ready to go. Trust me, I want this thing to be over.
We can't watch it until we complete security breach.
Stretching it out for the views. But before we wrap up for the day, I did want to talk about the big Orville elephant in the room, Mike's quest for revenge. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's a good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively.
Would Ultimate Custom Night be in William Afton's head then? Because it showed all the different locations in the nightmare that he has. I haven't played Ultimate Custom Night, I don't know, I'm just theorizing that it might be that because when he was screaming in his head, it had the 4 different locations. I don't know. Notice of termination, note the first, okay.
Effectively get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and odor. So weird connection between the two of them, right? But now, look at the phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 3. They use models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2, meaning whoever is sitting in that security guard chair Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. And that's not all. Their designs are burnt. It's a weird detail in the game, and it's something that the character encyclopedia repeatedly calls attention to. The burned texture for these phantom animatronics. Why is that so unusual though? Fazbear Frights is the first time in the franchise that we hear about anything burning down. From that point on in the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and are suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just moved or repurposed in some way. So when did they burn? And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and sister location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawings in the security logbook.
So would it go FNAF 1, FNAF 2, sister locations FNAF 4, then going into FNAF 6? Maybe?
So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael. Some tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm too much of the theory. In short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative. Mike as our protagonist, and William, his father, as our antagonist. Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is...
Oh no, so FNAF 4 would be first, then it would be FNAF... Okay, 4, 1, 2, sister locations 4, 6. Yes? Yeah? Are we in agreement on that, or have I got that wrong?
Right across the rest of the games. In Sister Location, he learns what his father's been up to and realizes what he has to do to correct it. After failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF 6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is just one problem: timing. Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to Sister Location, seen baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. It's also when he's gonna start to smell, because, you know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And we know that he's not going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made, Freddy's has been closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post 1993.
So oh, so it's not. So 4 might start first then, or no, yeah, because of the killings, and then he'd be... I don't know. I don't know. Oh god, I feel so, Matt Pat. I feel sorry for you. The scrambling and putting everything together.
Behind a wall, but that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're already deconstructed? But more importantly, we see FNAF 2 paychecks with the date 1987. That is way earlier than I think it can be. To be fair, Fritz Smith's pink slip on night 7 doesn't have a date.
Yeah, but that's a different name.
It's weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987, and then employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Anyway, just wanted to call that out because I don't have a solid answer for it, and I'd love to see your comments down below. And with that, my friends, this chapter comes to a close. We'll see you on March 25th for the grand finale as we cover the final 3 games in the franchise and the controversial answers we think solves what those games were trying to tell us. Until then, my fast heads, remember, even though Afton kinda succeeded in being brought back to life, gotta admit, he's still looking a little bit on the dry, dehydrated side.
Yeah, he is.
I suppose 3 fires and being dead for a decade will tend to do that to you. Fortunately, thanks to today's sponsor, Air Up, I think we can help him out with the hydration thing, not the whole burning alive thing. You guys know that I hate drinking plain water. It's just boring. And that then led me to my current crippling Diet Coke addiction. However, Air Up has found a way to harness the power of science to get me to drink more water, which not only do I love in principle, but I can truly say has changed my drinking habits forever. They use these special scent pods that fit directly onto the top of the bottle, and almost as if by magic, it makes the water taste like basically anything you want. How? If you guys have ever watched Food Theory, you've probably heard me say that smell is more important than taste, and that's exactly what Air Up's taken advantage of here. These pods are full of flavorful smells like watermelon, peach, wild berry. That one's my personal favorite. And by having the pods in front of your nose as you're drinking, it makes your brain think that that's what.
So yeah, you're just tricking your brain. It's just like, yeah, you're an idiot. Yeah, you're a big dum-dum. Look, if you can just smell it, then your mind just thinks, yes, that's what's in there.
But in fact, you're just drinking good old H2O. No additives, no preservatives, no sugars, no syrups, no aspartame, no nothing. I love my Air Up, but naturally, when I tell other
could that be the exact same in kind of like the FNAF lore, that they could use the power of smell to make you think that something else is happening, or something like that? No, we're looking too much into it. We're looking into a sponsorship that could tie in to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Once again, head on down to the description, get yourself a starter pack, and remember to use the code FREEFAV5. That is FREEFAV number 5, no spaces, to get your free favorite 5 variety pack. Experience how crazy awesome a water bottle can really be. And as always, my friends, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory.
And there we have it. Until next time, when we complete Security Breach, we will be back for the last Ultimate Timeline video. Hello, Albsterz Here. After finally completing Security Breach, it is time to have a little look at the Ultimate Timeline finale. Even though this has been majority debunked already in the community still want me to have a little look at this theory that MatPat come up with, because some elements are still true. So chapter 3 post-purple guy, and I've seen John's theory on the most recent one as well.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer
regarding the baby chip inside of her with the virus and the parallel to the books as well. So I'm interested to see what MatPat has come up with.
Entity.
All debts had been paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone too. William was dead. Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria.
I still don't think Henry is gone. I don't think he is. Because he killed his door inside of Lefty, and that takes a certain amount of cojones, in order to do that. And we still don't, I was talking about this in the comments with Poison Heart, we don't know what Henry has been up to or what he's capable of. If he was able to pull that off, what else is he able to do?
All of them collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone. All except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeat! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire.
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd had the perfect home, a thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her—
Hold on, is MatPat gonna try and piece together that the wife might be putting them all back together for the Pizzaplex? That would be kind of cool because we don't know where she is. But and then we also have the tie-in with the lion or the tiger or tiger. It's the tiger. In terms of the books as well that could be controlling the Pizzaplex, and something I feel like Henry's going to be involved somehow with the virus, because Afton was able to upload himself digitally. Why couldn't Henry do the same? He was just as smart as him. I know he ended up dying in FNAF 6, but we don't know what he did before he died.
They're trying to reach out to him in those desperate days. He was just too far gone.
Such a good lullaby.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship. And from there, she largely faded into obscurity. A mystery from
why
William's
would she want to come back?
A footnote in his history. And that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business, and now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her.
Oh, that would be true to be, because Henry's nowhere to be seen, so they don't know where he is either. So they would come after the wife of Afton with all the friggin' all the copyright, all the trademarks, the whole company in general. So she either is still a holder within the company, or she sold it off to someone completely different that we don't even know about, that we'll find out later in this new era of FNAF.
Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, the contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession and pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture.
See,
but now,
I still think there is something with Henry though. Let me know in the comments.
And trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together.
But didn't Michael also put his sister back together? This is another thing that's like stirring the pot in terms of the lore and the theories. Is at the end of, what is it? I think it is Sister Locations. Once you've completed all the custom nights and stuff like that, you get a cutscene that Michael ends up going up to Afton. He's like, oh, I have put him back. Father, I have put her back together. Or like something along them lines, if I remember correctly. So we know that there's a virus at play, but we don't know who is dangling or controlling at the top.
She would be the one to rebuild this family, to rebuild the pieces of that shattered life, to reclaim the kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something, collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was...
See, that's the thing. Like, has he also uploaded his body digitally or something into that? Okay, this might sound a bit crazy, and I don't know because I haven't read the books regarding the up-to-date lore, but I know that Tiger involved could possibly be the master behind all the viruses and stuff that's going on in the Pizzaplex. What happens if that is a version of Henry that has just turned so much, and he's rage for Afton? But then he would be at rest because that's what he was saying. The souls are at rest. I don't know. I feel like I just want to try and dive in to it somehow. But I don't know. With this whole new storyline and lore, I feel like they're just going to move away from all the Aftons and stuff come this DLC.
Such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family-owned. The irony was fitting. From there, she would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff.
So she's going to be doing that on top of that as well?
He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics, all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But
and that's where the Pizzaplex comes in, because you'd have like tens and thousands of children turning up to watch Freddy perform on stage, and they're just sucking the life out of the children.
Do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas. And
it just sounds like she's just gone full EA. Like, yes, just skins everywhere. Different variants of every single one possible. Now, I'm trying to remember back to... what was his name? That is playing the other side, or like could possibly be the parallel to Henry in the books, that has the mimic or stuff going on as well. And then we tie the... and then... if the virus was a...
Thus, the Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely.
Yes,
was
it
a
is,
sellout?
yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. It was exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like, what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion.
That's how they keep getting you to come back and keep paying that money.
It would keep people hooked. It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had to offer.
That does make sense, though, and that's why they've got so many endoskeletons.
Returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud in the public eye.
Yeah,
no one
I'm
would
not
want
surprised.
to hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like the threat of death, you know. So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhood.
Well, you're gonna be the PR team?
A game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
It's a conspiracy theory. They're trying to cover up the information. We will get it. We will.
Struggling game developers were a dime a dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So she found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. The right.
Is that what? Is that why William Afton is called Steve in the FNAF movie trailer? Because it's also a reference to Scott being called Steve in this parallel that he's supposed to be a doofus, apparently.
Right mix of desperate and doofus, willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the
So they're trying to write off the original 4 games?
job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever.
It's become meta. They got people theorizing and joking about Freddy Fazbear Entertainment and the bite of 87 that was actually the bite of 83.
Things were going shockingly well. Her takeover and reboot of the franchise was full and complete. Suddenly infused with cash, she built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace for children. A place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family.
So I think that, I think what's been debunked is his wife isn't actually at the top, but building this pizzaplex in order to collect enough remnant in the place is interesting. And with also the animatronics with inside the game, we had examples of this when Roxy was crying and having a breakdown in her room. Chica was talking to herself. They seem to be a little bit more coherent and have their own personalities in, like, the games now. So I feel like maybe it's an animatronic that has become so coherent and, like, human-like that they're collecting the remnant themselves, maybe tying back into this tiger one, or even this glitch Bonnie that we see in the DLC. I don't know, I'm theorizing. And they're the bad guy?
March 2035. The first was obvious. The crying child. Her little boy. The one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology. So that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. William's reason...
Hold on, that's Gregory, isn't it? Gregory has a bandage. And he wears shorts.
Search had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed
artificial blood
food,
and
making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems.
And this would be the virus? Oh, and that's why he's calling for help, because it's actually not him, because he's been ridden by the virus, and that's why Cassie ends up coming in, because he's being controlled and it's not actually him anymore.
If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical, normal human boy. She worked down in the bowels of the Pizzaplex, giving him life.
Whoa,
but it was
hey, that's the room.
It was another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him. No documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was.
There you go, Dobby. This is a sock and this is a poster of your family. Now, people are drawing comparisons, and also maybe this room is connected to the Mimic and learning and mimicking everything that's been going on as well. So it's either Gregory or it's the Mimic. I don't really know. Let me know down in the comments your theories in this post-it note room and who you think it is. Or is it both? Is it maybe a mixture?
In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days.
Yeah, that was kind of cool
when
we see that
two
Easter egg.
brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties, all for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt a warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she'd been working towards. This was what it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was...
Because there's also that code in the sister locations room in the Pizzaplex as well. It's supposed to be some sort of language. I can't remember the words that was actually on the wall, but that's also another thing. And what John, or FNAF, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, was saying and referencing as well was also the vampire story on the actual TV in reference to maybe Mike.
Was working. She had to keep going.
If I remember correctly.
If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the Pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It was the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation.
So they... Oh, I did not know that. So whoever bought it and whoever is behind the Pizzaplex intentionally knew that is the location that we need to build on, because that is where they are.
Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron. He was no longer flesh. It was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements were the top priority. Maybe pulled from their new line of glamrock animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare Bonnie parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit, 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo.
So she's going to use the digital version of Afton and put it inside of that, but people are saying that, oh, this is the thing, it's possibly the Mimic and it's not even Afton himself. It might just be a digital version of Afton that the Mimic has put in. I don't know. Like, you got viruses, hard drives, digital SSDs, you got VR. It's like... What is going on? We got I Am Robot going on with all the animatronics becoming coherent. It's going to be like a Detroit Become Human scenario. It's hard to keep up.
Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious. A planner. Someone
so Henry must have done this before he died as well.
Sure enough, there it was. Buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But he needed someone to test.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff in the first place with no explanation, told us to scan
What are these tapes connected to anyway?
So we wouldn't need to program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose.
Of course it's the one that I haven't played because it's VR. Oh man, I need to play Help Wanted.
This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running, spreading his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Oh, well, you ain't getting your face back. And that's where Vanessa comes in, isn't it? Because that's how he's able to communicate through into the real world, isn't it? I think, if I remember correctly.
Messy.
She's just under Afton's control.
Were reluctant, to say the least. But it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. And Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth, but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure.
Maybe.
She decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court.
We listened to these in the sister location room.
After she lost the custody case. I was supposed to be a good girl.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, the VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde, green eyes,
how unlucky is that?
for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated.
Maidenless.
Yes. She would do nicely. She would be the one to save dear old Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure,
yes,
she fought,
and this is where we get Glitch Trap, is it? Or Digital Glitch Trap?
Across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back, while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right way. The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being an Afton.
Oh yeah. Was it Freddy that talked about when we got the voice line of this in Pizzaplex? I was like, what? Mr. iRobot now.
So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her
So with the... Okay, this is where it gets a bit... Because we know there is a mimic virus, and we also know there's a part of Elizabeth somewhere as well. If we're going off John's recent theory video with the things, so we've got a digital version of Baby as well. So they've all collided digitally, maybe, then?
Last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be chief security officer at the Pizzaplex. A true family tradition
there was
to don the hat and
letter.
badge, and all it took was a recommendation from the top as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed. My friends are here, but I can protect you. I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector, but he was there, somewhere inside.
Maybe Henry. I'm not gonna let it go. Maybe, just maybe when he trapped himself inside of there as well. Wouldn't they all be jammed together then? Would it be a combination of all of them if they were all burnt alive? This is, it just gets so confusing.
Of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. And just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William, but they were there. Finally, all together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited. A happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was
now
just
we get
wrong
into this as
with
well.
The Pizzaplex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted, possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly
with the
way of
marionette,
belonging.
isn't it?
Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes, acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line that she refused to cross? After all, the Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits.
And what I still don't get as well is, because I haven't played Help Wanted because I ain't got a VR headset, is the Vanny mask where you take it on and off. Do you see like the digital version then that we see in the DLC trailer? Is that like the digital version of the Pizzaplex, and that's kind of what the digital side sees? So the viruses and stuff, we could actually see what's going on around. And is this also, like, connecting Charlotte in some way that is controlling all of these mimics and endoskeletons to go against the Pizzaplex?
But it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like
Slappy Van Winkle.
Generations ago. The very foundations
what
of this
name
place,
is
the
that?
materials and wires that constituted it, were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. If they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls, stealing pieces and parts of the old animatronics showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed, one of positive emotions and the other created from anguish.
Oh, really?
Anger, agony.
See, this is why I'm going back to the theory that something is so coherent themselves as an animatronic, they are collecting the remnant.
Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all
blob,
the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history. A collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endoskeletons and exosuits. As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the blob is the... like the connection of all of them being burnt in FNAF 6. That is the outcome of FNAF 6. The blob. And then it's just expanded
Even young
upon this.
Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory should have been her biggest concern. That bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders. Requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night, when he malfunctioned live on stage. Almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost.
So he's already been affected by the virus then, essentially, Gregory has?
Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him, but she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel, to rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex.
We do go on a killing
this
spree.
boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As her carefully created world crumbled around her one more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin.
Hey, I like what you did.
There you have it, my friends. Nearly a decade in the making, my FNAF timeline.
Okay, that was an interesting theory.
Here in 2023, the year of Fazbear Frights, by the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out. I think we can all agree that this part of the timeline was always going to be the hardest. So let me just break down some of the...
Yeah, because I still, obviously, you're probably screaming at me like, this is the part that's debunked. I don't know. I won't know until I read the comments. But I think it's his wife is the one. The connection with the blob and the marionette and stuff, I think is seems kind of solid, and rebuilding the family is possible due to the technology that they had.
The major points. First of all, the biggest swing of this episode, and obviously the one that everything else rests upon, Mrs. Afton being the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. Here's why I went with this route. Now, first and foremost, the head of Fazbear Entertainment is the single biggest mystery that we're meant to solve at this point in the lore. The Ultimate Guide brings it up repeatedly. Who's running the show? Who is okaying these decisions? And in the security breach memos, we get multiple mentions of someone manipulating things from the top down. Whoever this is, they are the person driving forward every other facet of late-stage FNAF lore here. They're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev. They're the ones relaunching the brand, building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground. So everything at the end of the timeline relies on this one singular answer.
Henry. I always come back. It's him all along. Or it could just be someone totally new, as this is a new era of FNAF, and they could introduce a new character that we're all like, huh? Yes, it was connected all along. Yes, we're just gonna sprinkle some crumbs back into the older games, so it looks like that we've got some.
Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, an adult robot Elizabeth, like we see older versions of robot kids in the fourth closet, or Mrs. Afton. Could it be someone completely new to the franchise? Absolutely yes, but in a game with so many returning faces and repeated themes, it would be pretty random and arbitrary. So, between these two girl bosses, who then would it be? Well, Elizabeth always wants to please her.
Okay, this is gonna sound nuts, and I know I've been kind of hammering home with Henry, but if Henry ended up finding a way in order to digitally upload his conscious like Afton, and they've also got the mimic thing that they're aware of as well, maybe someone rebuilt Henry and put his consciousness inside of a mimic, and that is him. They make him human-esque with all the different stuff that they've got, all the real-life blood, and that's Henry that ends up coming back. And he's at the top, and he finally owns everything after so long in the betrayal with Afton. And maybe that's why he built the Pizzaplex on top, because he knew that he would have him trapped down there, and he was in control, because he owns the actual place forever? I don't know. Maybe that's far-fetched. Maybe that's not even anything. But I like theorizing little things. Or let me know in the comments.
Daddy, so she'd be most likely wanting to bring him to life. But then, what's Vanessa's role in all of this? Vanessa is clearly meant to be a parallel for Elizabeth. Same hair, same eyes, similar backstories. But if the main goal is getting the Afton family back together, which seems to clearly be the case in Security Breach, then there's no need for Vanessa to be involved at all. We already have Elizabeth running the show. It would also mean that we suddenly have 2 robot kids running around, which feels narratively repetitive and quite frankly kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton. We know next to nothing about her outside of any clues that we can get from Immortal and the Restless and the lore song. But what her being head of Fazbear does is make every other piece of the lore fit. Suddenly, you can have one of every other type of character. 1 robot kid in Gregory, 1 brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, 1 OG corpse in William, and 1 possessed animatronic in Mud.
Did Afton's wife know Henry much? Because they were partners back in the day, so they must have had some sort of connection. I don't think there was any hatred towards each other. I know, I'll stop with the Henry.
Narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense. As I call out in my narrative, she'd likely have some stake in the original company and all of its assets. So as Fazbear folds as a company, I'd suspect a lot of it would return back to her. But there was one clue that really sold me on this particular direction, and that was this right here, in the post-it room. The big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side. That one scene shows that we have to include Mom in there somewhere, and the only place it makes sense for her to be is at the top. Now, there is one big dilemma with my interpretation of all this. The Ultimate Guide really seems to point out that the head of Fazbear doesn't want the glitch trap virus to spread. They call out one particular email in FNAF AR where the legal team calls a cease and desist to all action about scanning the circuit boards. And even in FNAF VR, we're told that the circuit boards get stolen back by the client, presumably once they realize what danger is on there, trying to stop glitch trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first place? Why'd they build over the FNAF 6 pizzeria? Why'd they go through an elaborate cover-up to make the possessed Vanessa an important part of the company? Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor point number 1, the Five Nights at Freddy's games were made by the rogue indie developer. Here's the thing, FNAF VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
It's recreating the lies told to you by the indie developer. And since Help Wanted has direct recreations of FNAFs 1 through 3, it means the games must be part of the fabrications that this developer made up. Also,
so Help Wanted 2, we know, covers Five Nights sister locations. Not FNAF 4, because that is a nightmare of the crying child, if I remember correctly, or it might be Michael. There's so much to remember. And then FNAF 6, that's where we might get the answers if they put FNAF 6 into Help Wanted. But I don't know if they would.
Also, all of this is heavily implied in the story of the same name, Help Wanted and Tales of the Pizzaplex, hence FNAF 1 through 3, canon games within the lore of the series. Big swing number 2, the elephant, or ghost in the room, Charlie infecting the Pizzaplex. John from the channel FNAF has made some great findings about Charlie's influence over the Pizzaplex. The cables that looked like the striped arms of the puppet, the Nightmarion plushies that you find hidden across the Pizzaplex in weird places, the staff bots with creepy smiles and in your dreams written on the front. All of these things scream puppets. Plus, with the puppet mask not having tears in the blob, seems to imply that Charlie's spirit exists elsewhere. She is still in play, and she has an important role, especially in Gregory's post-it room. The doors to the post-it room in the game's code are called Charlie doors, and inside we see a bunch of lit-up nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID's Fantasy did a great theory looking at the post-it notes, concluding that the crying child / Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie.
Not the remnant, goddammit. It's all about the Fazguru remnant. This is where the mimic comes into play, or the potential theory around that is that could be communicating with the mimic.
Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist. Instead of controlling one thing, she's affecting a lot of little details, foundational elements of the Pizzaplex. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in the franchise either. We've seen spirits communicating with people through physical writing in the survival logbook. So we know that this is an established means of spirit communication within this franchise.
Really?
And I suspect that to some extent it might be Charlie's influence making Gregory go haywire. Which brings me then to my final and probably biggest controversy in recent FNAF history, Gregory as Patient 46, the evil robot mastermind. Now, I know when I first came out with this theory a year ago, people were mad. But here's the thing, you don't have to take my evidence points for it anymore. The recent Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY, basically goes and just outright proves it. In GGY, we find out about a boy named Gregory who's getting all the high scores in the Pizzaplex arcade machines. When therapists start to go missing, it's confirmed that GGY is the one that's working to bump him off. And when animatronics start getting corrupted by a mysterious glitch, GGY's letters are found inside the code. He even chooses the code name Dr. Rabbit, for crying out loud. But obviously, by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burn Trap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why? How? Well, it's not really clear. I tend to believe that something must have happened to cause him to either lose his memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie talking to him in his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage in Glamrock Freddy.
Okay, this is... so possibly Gregory is going to be the bad guy and Ruin? What? We've also glitched spring or body?
Not exactly sure, and I don't think we have enough clues to solve any of it yet. But it makes sense from a story perspective why he'd start off evil on Afton's side and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends, I'm wrapping this thing up. Congratulations, we are on page 40. 22,000 words of FNAF, baby. Practically just wrote myself a Tales of the Pizzaplex short story. Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of the evidence we're given? Yeah. For me, honestly, it really does. And let's be honest with ourselves, the DLC will probably come out later this year and prove me completely wrong.
It's in July.
Wouldn't be the first time. Then comes the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless,
I am
so proud of this. This was a massive undertaking. And I'm so proud of our editors who have just destroyed the editing across all 4 of these installments. You guys are the best.
Edits.
Thank you for pushing through on 20+ minute uploads. You are unreal and your talent is unrivaled. I'm so lucky to work with you guys every single day. And like I mentioned before, keep an eye on the channel for an announcement regarding a talkback live stream with some special guests.
Yes, we ended up watching this as well when it was at the time.
So that one's coming up soon. And with that, my friends, we can finally rest. I can leave the demon to its demons with one final reminder that it was all just a theory. A game theory.
And there we have it. The final ultimate timeline. I still have a lot of questions regarding the theories and stuff around FNAF, but I feel like you're always going to have ideas and stuff regarding FNAF's lore because it is so complex. But Ruin does come out next month and we are going to be playing that. I'm going to bring a lot more games and stuff to the channel. The uploads are going to get back. So thank you as always for joining me on this video. If you're watching this as a singular video or you're watching this as the mega compilation as well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all the support on the channel. And let's see if we can get, what should we say? Help 100k by the end of the year. Let's try it. Let's reach for the stars, baby. As always, take care, and I will see you in the next video.
3 and 4. Count what you have now, don't count what you